webinar Target Setting for Key Performance Indicators. My name is Adrian Bruder. I am the Director of Research at the KPI Institute. Thank you, Ali, for the very nice introduction. Indeed, I'm not going to discuss any longer about my professional formation, as you finally did it. What I want to say is a few words about the KPI Institute. The KPI Institute is one of the global authorities responsible for advancing the knowledge in performance management, and particularly in managing correctly with key performance indicators. We have three main pillars on which we base our activities, which are research, publications, and educational programs. Today I'm going to discuss about KPI target setting, and I think this is the fifth webinar that the KPI Institute is organizing in partnership with the Madinah Institute for Entrepreneurship and Leadership this year. The first webinars were dedicated to topics such as introduction in the KPI world, KPI selection, KPI documentation, and KPI data gathering and analysis. As you can see here, these are very important building blocks of the KPI management framework concept map, which was developed by the KPI Institute to sustain its understanding and knowledge in this particular field of performance management. Now, as the main topics of today's agenda, I'm going to discuss about the importance of the KPI target setting, about how we can apply goal setting theory in practice, and as the main framework of the webinar, we'll go through several examples of KPIs and targets for these KPIs. We'll discuss about the tools and the main techniques that can be employed as part of the KPI target setting process. And as a conclusion, we'll finalize with some good practices and challenges in working with KPI targets. The main learning outcomes that are targeted as part of these webinars are for you to have a better understanding on the benefits and importance of KPI target setting, to get clarity into how to approach the KPI target setting processes, to learn how to address and avoid negative behaviors connected to target setting, and of course advice on linking performance targets to incentive systems, which is an issue raised in many occasions as part of the training courses and workshops that I've been attending and facilitated along the time. As I was emphasizing before, KPI target setting is a very important aspect of managing performance in an organization. So today we'll discuss in detail about this topic, as long as the time will allow us to do this. When we think about the target setting process, the word high but achievable immediately springs to our mind. We need to set targets at a high level to stretch staff, but the targets need to be perceived as achievable in the same time in order for staff to accept the stretch. Now, what happens in real life is that the world is much more complex than this. So there are several challenges that emerge as part of the KPI target setting process. Now, in terms of the importance of establishing targets, I would say that one important bit is that by establishing targets, we'll get to know what is the desired result that we are aiming. So it's a matter of looking at the baseline, the current state, and trying to establish our desired state of evolution in terms of meeting organizational strategic objectives or departmental strategic objectives, or even activities and aims that we have at the individual level. Targets also represent the starting point in the measuring and analysis process. As emphasized, it's about comparing the actual with the desired level. And very important aspect, it impacts behavior. And in terms of this aspect, there are several challenges which especially emerge when we are linking targets with incentive systems. This is a topic that we are going to approach later during the webinar. Let's start first with the theories that are informing target setting process. There are several of them which were framed along the time. Some of them see look at motivation and performance improvement appearing when target levels are set at intermediate difficulty. Such theories are the expectancy value theory, which was framed by Vroom during 1964. This theory in particular predicts that if targets are set at a high level, they will diminish motivation and performance, as people tend to perceive a low probability of achieving them. Another theory which goes along the same lines is the achievable motivation theory, framed by Atkinson in 1957 and then refreshed in 1974. This theory predicts that individual motivation and performance decreases as the perceived difficulty approaches the very ease. So, for example, the individual is certain that she will achieve his/her target, or the impossible, the opposite, when the individual is certain that he will fail to achieve his target. Now, even if these theories have their respects in terms of the matters or issues raised, the goal-setting theory, I'll say that is the one which is the best framed and most thoroughly informed. This theory, goal-setting theory, was framed in 1990 by Locke and Latton, and what they are in a way trying to emphasize is that specific high-hard goals lead to a higher level of task performance than do-easy goals or vague, abstract goals such as the exhortation to do one's best. Now, they made several studies in which they tried to emphasize and to prove this theory that setting high stretch targets is the best way in terms of working with target setting. And what they did, one of the things that they did, they went in Canada to a tree logging company, and they put together two teams. They assembled two teams of tree loggers. For one, they established a specific target of number of trees that they had to cut, and for another one, they didn't. Now, what has happened, mainly, each time they repeated the experiment, the team who had very well-established targets performed better than the team who didn't have any special target established for themselves. So this in a way proves the importance and the relevance of the goal-setting theory, or I should better frame it as the target-setting theory. Other experiments in the same respect were conducted in other areas of interest. One of them is sports, especially athletics. Now we know that in general athletes are aiming for very high performance, and when they are participating to official competitions, many of them are aiming to beat the competition record, the annual record, or most desirable, the world and Olympic records. Now, considering this specific context, what they did as an experiment, they made a long jumper athlete to try 5 times to exercise his particular activity to jump, and each time they didn't announce him in terms of the results obtained. So he jumped 5 times. None of these times he had, in a way, clear overview of his performance. Then they repeated the same experiment, while each time the athlete was informed about his performance. What has happened every time the experiment was repeated? The athlete performed in average 20% better when he acknowledged the targets. So again, acknowledging the target allows professionals in any type of areas of expertise to perform better, to try to do better off. Good. Now, let's go further with the target setting process, having in mind the goal setting theory main aspects, that targets ideally should be challenging but in turns achievable. Now, in terms of the process of establishing targets, there are several prerequisites that we need to be aware of and perform as part of reaching the moment when we need to establish the targets. One of the first things that we should do is to review stakeholder expectations. And after we review stakeholder expectations and, in a way, we frame the strategy of the organization or of the department, we need to formulate the corporate strategy and objectives. Now, once the corporate strategy and objectives are framed, the next step will be to establish the KPIs. The KPIs which will reflect, in a way, the degree in which we'll achieve, in which these objectives established for attaining the company or the department strategy will be attained. And a very important bit of establishing the KPIs and documenting the KPIs once they are established is to try to find the most relevant targets that in a way mirror the way you want to achieve a certain objective. Now, what you have here is an example in the first line of a SMART objective. In literature and both in research literature but also in practice, SMART objectives are popular words. How we can frame a SMART objective? Well, improve the client satisfaction rate to 80% by the year end under the customer service management leadership can be such an example of a SMART objective. If it is to look into different components of a SMART objective, the way we can frame it in a more granular or and more clear approach is to have an objective more narrowly defined, improve customer satisfaction, than or more concisely defined, than to try to establish a KPI that reflects achievement, a possible achievement in terms of reaching this objective. In this case, one of the KPIs through which we can measure the specific objective, improve customer satisfaction, will be customer satisfaction index, which generally is calculated through a survey. And for the KPI, then we'll have to establish a target. In this case, let's say that we are aiming a customer satisfaction index of 80%. Of course, as part of documenting a KPI, knowing the information, the key information about a KPI, which will enable us, in fact, to measure it and to reach the targets. We'll need to know the measurement time frame. We'll need to know the responsible of meeting the KPI targets. In this case will be the customer service manager, but of course other components which are part or should be part of a KPI documentation template, which is limitations, purpose, definition, and so on. This will not enter today in the purpose of this webinar. We'll focus specifically on targets, but in a way or another, this is the process that we'll have to go through in terms of establishing a target. First, we need to know what we want to measure. Then we need to establish the KPIs for which we measure these objectives, and then we have to look into the targets. What are the desired levels that we are aiming for the KPIs that we've established? If we have this approach in which, in a way, we are attaching a KPI to an objective, and by attaching a KPI to an objective, definitely the objective will become smart, because the KPI has a target, has a time frame, has a responsible, so has all the components of a smart objective, of smart. Entitled, by clustering KPIs with objectives, objectives will become smart. Another benefit of having this approach is that we can measure an objective from different angles. So for an objective, we can establish different KPIs that reflect different components of how we can reach a specific objective. One of this is customer satisfaction, and here is how we can mirror it. Yes, customer satisfaction, client satisfaction is the same thing. We can have a target of 100%. Now this might be to stretch, depends on the current state of each organization in terms of client or customer satisfaction. But another way in which we can frame or we can frame the way we measure the achievement in this specific objective is to look at the number of complaints. And in terms of complaints, again, it's a matter of in a way, looking at what is the current stand, and then establish what is the desired level that we want to establish. It might be less than 3 complaints, or it can be 0 complaints. As for one KPI, we are aiming the most, so the trend is good when increasing. For the other KPI, number of complaints, the trend will be good when decreasing in terms of meeting the targets. Okay, how we are going to establish these targets? What are the reference sources for establishing targets in KPIs? Now, there are several sources in which we can analyze as part of documenting our KPI targets. One of them will be historical records. Now, each company, when establishing KPIs, part of these KPIs are already tracked in different departments, in different settings, and historical records exist. So it is a matter of looking into these historical records and try to analyze what was the performance, what was the trend, and try to come up with a target that will reflect the desired result that we want to achieve for the next period. Of course, when looking at historical records or using historical records for establishing a target, this won't be the only component. We'll have to look at other aspects that might influence our target. As yes, historical records looks at past performance, and future performance can be influenced by conditions in both internal and external environment. So another sources of reference in terms of target setting will be both internal benchmarking and external benchmarking. We can look at internal benchmarking, for example, in terms of KPIs such as employee satisfaction, employee engagement, budget variance, and it's a matter of getting this information from different departments. However, we'll need to be very careful when doing this, as if there's no standardization calculation formula for these KPIs, we might end up with different, in a way, targets or different ways in which KPIs are meeting their targets. Another source is external benchmarking. Again, here we need to be very careful in terms of the thresholds that are established for certain KPIs. For example, KPIs such as lost time injury frequency rate coming from the HSSC department, or budget variance, or punctuality, for example, in transportation system, might have different thresholds established. So it's a matter of first identifying if we are measuring the same thing. So it's a matter of measuring apples with apples and not apples with oranges. And of course, whenever we are doing this, we need to look and analyze the market trends in general. What are the conditions of the market? In some certain years, maybe the trends are increasing, but recession can come, different aspects can impact the company's activities. New competitors might enter the market, or different financial difficulties might emerge as part of the general business environment. And yes, we need to be aware of these aspects when establishing targets. Now, another way to establish targets is to start these targets. For certain number of KPIs, we don't have any sort of data. Usually, studies showed up that around 20% to 30% of the KPIs which are established in the first place don't have targets for them, and we might not have internal and external benchmarking data available. So in this case, it's a matter of starting a target from thin air. How we are going to do this? Well, ideally it should be done well in advance before, in a way, activating the KPI. For example, if it is to start measuring a KPI with the new financial year, which might be, for example, starting from January 2014, a good practice is to establish objectives, KPIs, and set targets well in advance, maybe 3 to 6 months before the year end. So many companies are starting in a way this process during July, August, some of them in September, October. But the idea is that while establishing such a target from thin air, it's a matter of testing it before actually starting to use it and report performance as part of a particular KPI. So try to establish the target 3 to 6 months in advance. Look and analyze if the target is too highly stretched, not achievable, or if it's too low established, in which case you need to raise it up a little bit. And then while you are doing this testing for 3 to 6 months, afterwards you can in a way look into an average that might reflect better the desired level that you want to achieve, and target that it's in the same time achievable while stretch enough, and you can implement it. Another way to establish targets is to drill down into these targets. So this will imply a top-down approach, which means that you need to start from the organizational level and continue to department level up to individual level. Or if it is to look into the balanced scorecard perspective, it's about trying to make this analysis starting from the financial perspective, where most probably the financial KPIs are pretty well established. Generally, companies know what is their desired level in terms of revenues that they want to achieve, in terms of the profits they want to achieve, and then it's a matter of trying to drill down into different perspectives and see what is informing a particular meeting a particular KPI. For example, we want to achieve 80% customer satisfaction, and this will mean that yes, we can look into delivery, service, on-time delivery targets. We can look into also a net promoter score. What is the advocacy of our products or services? And it's a matter of trying to make some analysis in which will look at the cause and effect relation between metrics. Same as with trying to increase the number of customers. We'll have to look into what is our strategy. Do we want to have repeat customers, or do we want to have new customers? In terms of having or attracting new customers, are we going to in a way approach the same markets, or we want to penetrate other markets? How we are going to increase in a way the number of customers? What will be the strategy in terms of attracting them? Are we going to maybe give more training to our customer representatives? Are we going to employ a new personnel for approaching these customers? So by looking into these cause and effect relations, we can establish different targets for these components, which in the end will or can inform the targets at upper levels, such as in a number of new customers attracted, or customer satisfaction, or even higher in terms of net profit and revenues. Good. What you have here are some examples on how you can establish these targets while drilling down into them. Both it can be done both vertically, top down, but also horizontally. You can look in different targets, establish in different departments, and then come up with a target that you want to achieve at the particular level where you are aiming to measure performance. Same, for example, with global sales. You can look into what is the aimed increase in different countries, in different regions, and then you can come up and establish a target for a global level as an example. Good. Now, in terms of establishing targets and thresholds, you have to start by determining the trend of each KPI. Is the trend good when increasing? Is the trend good when decreasing? Or is the trend good when within range? So there's an important aspect that we need to be aware of. Another good practice and aspect that you need to approach is to try to establish colors to represent these thresholds that are established. Red is usually associated with thresholds below the desired level, and green with targets above desired or results above desired level. However, companies usually try to establish a buffer interval, which is mirrored by the yellow color or yellow interval, which in a way make the transition between what is considered worse performance and what is considered good performance or desired level. Good. In terms of thresholds and traffic light signals, I've emphasized before that we need to look at the trends and analyze the KPIs and how we are meeting targets in KPIs in terms of the trends. Certain KPIs are good when trend increases, such as profit, such as customer satisfaction, such as revenues, while some KPIs are good when trends are decreasing, such as number of defects, number of complaints, number of or expenditure costs that companies are generally in a way having. And there's a third category of KPIs which have the trend good when within range. And such KPIs examples could be budget variance in terms of KPI, which reflects how we are meeting the budget, usually at organizational level, depending on the size of the organization. Also, we can have budget variance between plus to minus 3%. Another KPI that could be within range is employee turnover, because of course there are organizations who are looking for refreshing their human resources, trying to attract in the organizations employees with new capabilities, with fresh minds, with new ideas. So all the time it's a matter of not trying to decrease necessarily the employee turnover up to zero, but to try to keep a certain level of cyclicity. It might be plus minus 3%, plus minus 5%. It depends on the organization and its objectives. Good. Now let's have a look into some popular KPI examples. We have a list of 50 examples and how they are used by different companies into practice. One of the most popular KPIs is number of projects on time or number of active projects on budget. Now, depending on each company's activities, the targets can, in a way, range. But for example, in this case, for Melbourne Water, they have on time target of 80% and on budget target of 95%. If it is, however, to, in a way, mix these two KPIs in a single KPI, percentage of active projects on time and on budget, probably desired target will be somewhere at around 60 to 70%, because it's harder to have both projects, all projects, both on time and on budget. Another relevant KPI and popular KPI is budget variance. In this case, the city of Atlanta looks at targets somewhere in the area of plus minus 6 to 8% that they are aiming at. Budget variance, of course, will vary in terms of the level at which we are measuring it. If we are discussing about budget variance at organizational level, definitely the targets would have to be around probably the figures of plus minus 1 to 3%. We might, especially when we are talking about budgets of millions or billions of dollars, while at a more granular level, departmental level, or project level, this budget variance can go to up to plus minus 10%. Customer satisfaction is another KPI which is commonly monitored by companies. Now, it depends on how it is captured. You can have a score which can range, as you can see here, from 1 to 5, or you can have a score from 1 to 10, or you can just calculate it as a percentage. Generally, for customer satisfaction, organizations are aiming values between or over 80%, up to 95%, and some of the organization even more. This depends also in the strategy that they are employing and the value proposition towards customers. If they have a customer intimacy strategy, probably they will aim for customer satisfaction values which go over 95%. Another KPI is employee turnover. As I've mentioned before, this is one of the most popular KPIs which are measured by the HR department. Now, depending on the organization, depending on the industry, the targets for this KPI can vary. Here you have a benchmarking report for different industries in North America with respective targets attached. They are generally go from 5% to resources industry, utilities industry, up to 12% in financial institutions. Yes, for example, at the Australian Post, what they are aiming for 2013 is a summer target around the 7% level, while Agreco Group, they have a target, or they had a target for 2012 around 11.5. As you can see, all organizations are trying to stretch their target as much as possible. If in previous years the targets were highly established, as they are approaching the current state, the targets are becoming stretched, more stretched. Good. Employee engagement is another KPI which is very popular nowadays, and is probably one of the most powerful KPIs that can be monitored as part of looking into the employee performance, working environment, innovation, and growth. For Randstad, the target, for example, is 70. It can be expressed both as a score or as a percentage, but targets which go above 70% are very highly, in a way, very good results. If you are aiming and reaching over 70%, this means a very good employee engagement level. In terms of the geography, yes, different results, but in a way the thresholds are not don't differ too much. For example, probably from 6.8 they go up to 8.2. In order to get over 85% in terms of employee engagement might be very difficult. For example, at Australian Post, we have 77.5 employee engagement that is aimed, and for the health and safety executive, it's 55%. All the time, all these targets need to be established, looking also at the baseline. So it's a matter of looking at the baseline, what is the current state, and trying to see where you want to be in the next 1 year period, for example. If at a certain point you are at 50% employee engagement or employee satisfaction, even if you are aiming, let's say, 80 or 90%. It's a matter of analyzing if you have the capabilities in the organization to in a way to meet the target in a specific interval, 6 to 12 months. Because yes, you can forecast it, you can establish a target, but if you don't have the capabilities, a better way to do it is to establish for a certain period lower target, for example, going from 50% to 70%, and once you meet the 70% target, it's a matter of going even further and trying to stretch it to 90% and above this level. Good. Now, let's go even further. Net Promoter Score, it's one of the KPIs which measure the level of advocacy. In a way, they reflect if your customers are advocating your services, your products towards third parties. So this KPI is a little bit special because it's calculated on a scale from 1 to 10, where the people who are scoring from 1 to 6 are detractors, the ones who are scoring from 9 to 10 are promoters, and the calculation formula for this KPI is number of promoters minus number of detractors and the total number of customers who expressed an opinion. Because the targets will range from minus 100 to plus 100, having a positive result is from beginning an achievement. As studies reveal, average firms have between 5 to 10% net promoter score, and probably highest targets are reached by companies who have a policy which aim customer intimacy, such as Rolls-Royce, such as Harley-Davidson, such as Louis Vuitton, or other high-end companies who are looking very, very seriously into how they are approaching their customers. Yes, and we have here some figures for companies. Apple 67%, Samsung's in terms of the television division, they have only 35% net promoter score. So this can vary a lot. As long as you have a positive result, you are on the right track. A lot of companies have, or most of the companies have negative results in terms of the net promoter score. Recall the work case frequency, it's another KPI in terms of popularity measured by a lot of organizations. Now, very interesting in terms of working with KPI targets and meeting the targets, it's that best practices should look into analyzing the KPIs, putting the KPIs in context. So commentaries are something that we should aim as part of meeting the targets, analyzing the targets, and sending a message in terms of what should be the next desired level that we are aiming, and what are, in a way, the initiatives that we'll take in terms of meeting certain targets. Good. Training hours per employee, it's another popular KPI. Now, in terms of targets which you can establish for this KPI, they can range quite extensively. If for very technical industries, we can have targets for this KPI which can go over 60 hours of training per employee per year. Now, in general, average targets look into figures around 24 hours of training, which mainly resembles 3 days of training, or 4 days of effective training, if we consider that probably from an 8 day of training, effective training will be around 6 to 6.5 hours. Good. So these are a few examples of KPIs and targets which are established and in a way aimed by companies in practice. Now let's have a look a little bit at the target setting process. How we are approaching the target setting process? Well, it's a matter of starting top down. consult the target setting in terms of approaching the top management, and then it's a matter of adjusting these targets both vertically and horizontally as part of the maybe the balanced scorecard perspectives, but also within the same perspective we can have this calibration. It's a matter of reviewing the targets upon KPI activation. As I was emphasizing, sometimes you need to start a target from thin air, so it's a matter of trying to adjust the level in the target before analyzing and tracking the performance for that particular KPI. But this is especially important when we need to link performance with incentives. So this is a very sensible aspect that I'm going to approach in the upcoming minutes. And of course, if it is a need to change the target, yes, we need to refresh the target. Otherwise, it's a matter of continuing monitoring the target that was initially established. While establishing targets, there are several challenges that emerge. Some of them are the following: non-existence of trends data for new KPIs, scalability issues in terms of setting the right targets in short-term versus long-term achievements, lack of consensus in terms of having different targets established for measuring the results in a KPI in different departments. Also, when we are linking KPIs with and targets with incentives and reward systems, will trigger negative, or we can trigger negative behavior, so we need to be very aware of these aspects. And there are several biases that affect the process, especially when the targets are linked to the incentives. Now, in terms of the main biases, some of them are the following. Managers might choose at some point to compare themselves with high performance, while others will try to compare themselves with companies of similar performance. So it's a matter of establishing what is the level of comparison. Historical data considered may be based on a short period of time, affecting the accuracy of the analysis. Let's say a lot of companies, a lot of managers, they are trying to look into the performance from the last year with in terms disregarding what has happened in the last 5 years, and also what are the general conditions in the market. And another bias will be the poor processing of data, like wrong forecasting analysis techniques that can affect in the end the reliability of the targets set. And one of the major issues, as emphasized before, is how we are going to link the targets with the incentives. Now, this is one of the major challenges that companies are facing. Even if in an ideal world, maybe we shouldn't link performance with incentive systems, in the end, most companies are doing this. And it's a matter of how they are approaching this particular process. Now, in terms of this particular subject, linking performance targets to incentives pay, of course, there are different frameworks that can be approached. The achievement of performance targets can be linked to bonus plans, commission plans, or both. And this is generally how companies are doing it. They can either establish a certain bonus if they are reaching, if a certain target is reached. Let's say it can be a percentage from the salary, 10% of the salary. So if you are meeting a target, you'll get a 10% of the salary. If you're not meeting the target, you won't get anything. Another approach, which in a way it's better because it won't allow negative behavior to emerge so prominently will be to establish different levels for rewarding performance. So even if you are not meeting 100% of the established target, still you should receive something. So in this example, for reaching 90% of the target, you can get a 3,000 pounds bonus. If you reach 100%, you'll get a 10,000 pounds bonus. And if you achieve or overachieve the target, you'll go over the target. For each additional percent, you'll get 1,000 pounds bonus. This can be one of the schemes that can be applied in terms of linking performance to incentives pay. Another one is the linear approach, in which as long as for each percentage of the target that was achieved or overachieved, you'll get a certain amount of money. Now, this sort of bonus and commission schemes can come also as a mixture. You can have a linear progressive approach, you can have a linear regressive approach, or you can have a linear mixed approach in which both progressive and regressive functions are employed. However, in terms of achieving targets and linking them to performance, companies or some companies try to detach from this, in a way, habit of just rewarding employees with money, and they try to have a different approach, more innovative approaches in terms of how they will reward performance. One of these companies is Atlassian, which is an Australian company, a software company, and they have a different approach in terms of rewarding performance. What they are doing, they allow employees to reward each other bonuses based on their own perception as many times as they consider necessary, in the limit of $50 USD dollars per bonus. So a particular employee can reward his colleagues as many times as he considers proper during a day for a certain period of time, without any restrictions. This approach indeed is maybe very innovative. It's in a way it won't work for all companies, but in this case, mainly with a number of around 300 employees, the total bonuses that were allocated by employees were around $65,000. So employees, in a way, they were very careful in the way they rewarded their colleagues with these bonuses. Another way to do things, another way to reward employees is to look at non-financial means of rewarding them. So, for example, in this case, the same company allowed employees every 3 months to work to whatever they wanted in whatever environment preferred, as long as after 24 hours they presented the results of their work. And indeed, there were a lot of achievements as part of these initiatives, a lot of new ideas that were generated, a lot of bugs that were solved out. How we can approach meeting targets? Well, you can do it also through gamifications, which means in trying to apply gaming-like elements into a non-gaming situation in order to provide motivation or to influence behavior. How you can use gamification? Well, you can try to establish rankings. You can provide with merit badges. You can have progress bars so as to engage employees in this in their working activities. Also, proper implementation of the gaming engages and motivates employees, provides room for individual development, and creates a basis for innovation. So a lot of companies nowadays are trying to have these more innovative approaches in terms of how they are providing with a more competitive environment which will facilitate performance without trying to reward or financially reward their staff. Now, in terms of why they are doing this in a way is because ideally we shouldn't link performance with rewards. However, if we are doing this, if we are linking performance with and meeting targets with rewards, we'll need to try to be very careful. Why? Because generally this sort of matching rewards and recognitions with performance enhance negative behaviors. So use targets as precision drugs with caution. Some of the negative behaviors that emerge as part of linking performance with rewards are sandbagging, which means that generally employees try to establish lower targets than the realistic levels estimated as possible. Usually sales departments, in sales departments you can this sort of behavior is most popular. Another behavior will be the tunnel behavior, looking after the achievements of own targets without consideration of the implication for other areas of the organization. Unethical behavior, it's about disregarding environmental and safety considerations in the process of meeting targets. And gaming, it's about influencing results through unapproved means in order to ensure that targets are achieved. Now, there are several case studies and several examples of these sort of behaviors. In, for example, in terms of tunnel behavior, healthcare industry, Australia, where hospitals, they have a certain target for the emergency department, which was less than 3% bias per year. Now, doctors, they try to accommodate as many patients as possible because this meeting this target was linked with the rewards and funds that were provided by the government. So in the end, what happened, there were several deaths which emerged as part of or from the fact that hospitals couldn't accommodate and couldn't provide medical supervision for these patients, which were very lessons to be learned. Too much pressure on achieving targets make people adjust results and adopt a tunnel behavior without taking into consideration the consequences of their actions. In terms of unethical behavior, a very famous case is Ford, which is established a very stretched target and very narrowly defined. Weight of a car under 900 kilos, cost of the car under $2,000, time between design and production under or 25 months when the average was 46, while trying to compete and surpass the competitors, in this case the Japanese. What has happened was that in the end they released the car before testing it in order to meet the targets. They didn't address any issues in terms of solving the problems with the explosions in the gas tanks that emerged as part of the collision test done, and this cost the lives of around 500 people, which died as part of the gas explosions. And in the end, even if they had very high sales of over 3 million cars and big profits, they had to call back over half of the cars, 1.5 million, which cost the company a lot of money. So it's again a matter of trying to reach results on a short term versus disregarding the impact on a longer term. And gaming, which is a common approach for companies. A very interesting example is from the educational industry in US and especially it's associated with private schools. When teachers from a certain public school, in this case it was even a public school, tried to fix the results of the students in order to be highly ranked and to attract more students and to get funds from the government. Good. Let's look now at conclusion. In terms of good practices in setting targets, well, as part of the technical aspects, try to set targets based on thorough research. Test and adjust targets before putting them into use. Cascade targets top down. Establish initiatives that support the achievement of targets, and continuously review and update targets. As part of the social aspects, make sure that employees understand their job role and what is expected from them. Create an organizational culture that promotes constant learning and improvement. Involve target owners in the target setting process. Do not link targets immediately to financial incentives, and celebrate achievements and reward even small achievements. And these rewards can come not as financial ones, but also can come as trying to present the good results in front of a certain employee, of a certain team, in front of the entire organization, trying to distinguish a certain person, trying to do this in other manners, not necessarily financial ones. As part of the challenges in target setting, yes, you need to be aware that sometimes forecasts are based mainly on past performance, so we need to look into what is the current state, what is the trend in the market, and only afterwards try to establish the targets. Sometimes targets are allocated inappropriately across departments, teams, or employees, so it's a matter of trying to see the cause and effect relations and to have an aligned approach, a focused approach in terms of establishing the targets. Sometimes targets are perceived either too high or too low, so it's a matter of finding the balance in how you are establishing the targets. Targets sometimes are based on wrong KPIs. So this usually resembles the phrase hitting the target and missing the point. For example, companies sometimes look for rewarding their managers in terms of the revenue that they are gaining instead of the profit they are gaining. So they are disregarding the expenditures. You might have revenue, but high revenue than last year, but the cost might be even bigger. So a better way to link rewards with performance is to, in terms of financial KPIs, is to look into the profit that is generated. And in terms of this, sometimes setting targets just for financial KPIs is not enough, because it's a matter of establishing inappropriate time horizons. So it's a better practice will be to establish targets both in financial but non-financial KPIs, which in terms look at increasing performance or target performance on a long time range. Also be aware in terms of the data analysis and how you are doing the data analysis. Sometimes targets are set based on poor data analysis. Also, in terms of reviewing the targets, best practices should aim in trying to review the targets periodically, because in this way you can see if the targets are indeed hit it, and if not, why and how you can address this discrepancy in performance. Another aspect is that targets are imposed and not set through collaboration. So ideally, in terms of establishing targets, you should involve both employees from first lines and other key stakeholders such as customers, suppliers, managers. So again, it's contextual based, but when establishing targets, try to have approval from the persons who are in a way owners of the target and meeting the targets, because in this way you'll make them accountable for meeting these targets as well. And yes, intercorrelation between targets is not considered. It's about the cause and effect relation that I've mentioned before. And the last thing is that targets are not accompanied by initiatives. So whenever you're establishing a target and analyzing a target, we'll need to look at the target also in terms of the initiatives that are employed for meeting that particular target. Without initiatives, without projects, establishing targets will have no meaning, because we won't be able to hit the targets. We will not be able to achieve those targets. Finally, yes, take it. You can take it as a warning. You can have a look at this as something that you need to be aware and apply to your organizations. Targets may cause systematic problems in organizations due to narrowed focus, unethical behavior, as mirrored before, increased risk-taking, decreased cooperation, and decreased intrinsic motivation. So in terms of targets, as the goal setting theory is mirroring, target setting is very relevant because it allows performance to be attained. It allows improvement in terms of performance, but use care when applying targets in your organization, and try to analyze when establishing targets the different sources, the environment, internally, externally, and afterwards, yes, it's a matter of yes, trying to find the best fit for your targets and trying to meet these targets which are relevantly established. I think that will be all in terms of the webinar for today. You have a list of resources which will be available for you as part of the soft copy for this webinar, and you can get more data from this. Otherwise, more details in terms of the KPI target setting process and other aspects that relate with the KPI management framework can be explored as part of the certification programs that the KPI Institute are facilitating throughout the world. The next one will be in Saudi Arabia between 8 to 12 December in Riyadh, and between 15 to 17 December in Khobar. Thank you very much for attending this webinar. Ali, you have the word.
Well, thank you very much, Adrian, for a very comprehensive webinar on the target settings of KPIs. Now, folks, we are open for the question and answers. You have two options. Either you could put your questions in the question box, chat box. I'll be happy to read them over on your behalf. Or you could raise your hand. There is a hand icon available on your webinar console on the right side of your webinar remote console. So if you click on it, I will give you an opportunity to speak to Adrian by unmuting your microphone. So let me go to the question box. I see there are a couple of questions already posted, so let me go one by one. We have Brother Muhammad Ghani from Indiana, USA. Could we label purpose instead of objective, and objective rather than smart objective? It is because purpose refers to the general target, while as objective is the specific one.
Now, thank you very much for the question. I think in terms of this particular topic, it's a matter of understanding the terminology, how we are playing with terminology. So purpose, objectives, targets. Why? Because different organizations are using this in different ways and sometimes interchangeably. In terms of the way we are seeing these aspects, purpose or goals are or should be very general defined. So in a way, they will reflect some very high or very large areas of interest for organizations. We want to look into growing the business. We want to look in increasing profitability for the business. However, in terms of targets, these are very specific elements which are part of a KPI. Yes, so in terms of these terminologies, it's a matter of how you are framing them. For me, goals are very general, and in a way, goals consolidate a set of several objectives, a set of several strategic objectives for a company, for a department of the company. Now, how you are measuring these objectives? You are measuring them through KPIs, and the targets will be attached to the KPIs. This is, in a way, best practice in terms of how you can work with objectives. Why? Because in this way, if you are attaching the target directly to a KPI and not to an objective, you have the opportunity to analyze the achievement of a particular objective from different angles. As the example emphasized in the webinar, if you are looking to increase customer satisfaction, yes, you can monitor percentage customer satisfaction through a survey, but you can also measure the number of complaints that you are receiving, or even the net promoter score, the advocacy level of your customers. So targets ideally should be attached to KPIs, which in turn will look into reflecting or measuring the degree in which you are achieving a certain objective. They can be linked to objectives also, but this is a matter of options that you have. Yes, you can link it to objectives. You can have a smart objective, or you can link it to a KPI, which in turn will make the KPI smart. And if you are attaching a KPI to an objective, the objective will become smart. Hopefully, I've answered your question, Mr. Mohammed. But yes, it's a matter of determining how you are using the terminology first, and afterwards you can try to frame these concepts and find the logic.
Okay, thank you. We have another short one from Umar Javed. What is the difference between target and a goal?
Now, I think this is something that, in a way, I've approached as part of the first answer. Sometimes organizations, and both in the educational or research literature, academic literature, but also in practice, you'll find these two terms interchangeably. So sometimes companies, when referring to establishing targets, they are referring to goals. So these words are, or these terminologies are used interchangeably. Even the theory, the goal setting theory, it's using the word goal and not target, when basically it is referring to a target. Yes, it's about how you are establishing targets. Why goal setting theory and not target setting theory? Maybe one of the explanations is that Locke and Ed Locke and Gary Ledman, the founders of the goal setting theory, are not, as per formation, economists, but psychologists. So again, it's a matter of understanding the terminology. Goals, for me, are very general. They, in a way, consolidate objectives, which are measured through KPIs, and for these KPIs, we have to establish some targets. But it's a matter of choice, how you are choosing to use terminology. Same as with the KPIs. Sometimes you'll find the word KPI or the terminology as KPIs used by organizations, sometimes performance indicators, sometimes performance measures, indicators, metrics, the delta targets, all these sort of terminologies. What is very important is to have a common understanding of these terminologies and how you can apply them into practice.
Okay, brilliant. We have a hand raised, so let me go now straight to Mr. Ronald Nayan. Ronald, can you hear us? Could you please introduce yourself, where you're calling, and ask a question?
Hello, Ali.
Yes, we can hear you, Ronald. Could you?
Yes, I have a question to Adrian.
Yeah, could you please introduce yourself first, where you're calling from, and then ask the question, please?
Okay, I'm called Ronald Nyenje, calling from Uganda, that is East Africa. In Africa, I'm working with a company called Government Agency. It's a Uganda Revenue Authority in charge of tax collection. We have a problem. Hello?
Please, hello, Ronald. Please pose the question.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Ronald, we can. Please go ahead with your question now. Thank you.
Okay. We have a problem of calculating indices. Is there a process of calculating indices?
Thank you for the question, Ronald. Indeed, this is an interesting subject, indices and weights. In terms of the indices, it depends on what type of indices you are using. Mainly indices are used when in a way trying to have a different perspective consolidated in a certain KPI. Now, in terms of these indices, there is not a specific way of calculating it, but it's a matter of particularly looking into what type of indices are you calculating. For example, you can look into customer satisfaction index or index, which can be calculated from looking at 10 variables up to 100 variables. Same it can be with employee engagement. Employee engagement can be in a way is done through a survey, so you'll have a certain number of indices that you are looking into from 12, which is employed by the Gallup organization, up to 120, which can be employed by other organizations. So in terms of this, there is not a particular way of calculating indices, but it's contextual based.
Hello?
Yes.
Let me just give you an example. We have one which we are trying to construct. We are calling it compliance index, tax compliance index. It has a number of components. You have ratios, you have numbers, but we wanted to look at compliance from a holistic view. So we were wondering, how can we go about this? You don't want to look at compliance in a silo form. You want something that can give you a picture of how you are improving as far as compliance is concerned. So we are having a serious challenge. So I thought that maybe there could be a process that we can take or can use to make sure that we come up with something that we are looking at. The satisfaction compliance, index is something that is common. Client or customer satisfaction is something which is common. But when it comes to something like tax compliance, I've not seen it, but we believe that it's something that can be calculated, and maybe you people as experts, maybe you can advise on how we can go about it.
Now, in terms of this, Ronald, I'm not an expert in the field of financials, but what I can advise you to do is to go on smartkpis.com. We have a section dedicated to financial KPIs, and there are several indexes and calculation formulas for these indexes. Some of them might resemble the one that you want to calculate particular for your organization in terms of tax compliance.
Thank you.
Okay, you are welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ronald, for your question. Now let me move to the question box. There's another question from Brother Mohammed. What do you think about the latest approach to motivate staff? is combination of task and humanity orientations.
Now, indeed, as I was emphasizing, thank you for the questions. First of all, as I was emphasizing before, yeah, it's a thin line in terms of, in a way, meeting performance and linking performance with rewards and the behaviors that emerge as part of these processes. So, in terms of this, I will say that an approach which looks at both financial aspects but non-financial aspects in relation with rewards and recognition programs and how they are linked with performance management can be one of the best approaches. As I was emphasizing, companies such as Atlassian from Australia are trying to approach different ways of engaging employees in terms of rewarding employees, not necessarily by linking financial rewards with their results, but also trying to give them more space, trying to give them the necessary autonomy in order to perform better. So in the end, there is no standardized way of doing things. Different companies are doing different, have different approaches. All the time when I'm particularly part of workshops, participating in workshops, training courses, of conferences, these questions emerge, but there is no one particular way of doing things. It's also something that relates with the culture of both the organization, but also the general culture that is particular for a certain region.
Well,
yes.
Thank you very much. I guess that brings us towards the end of the webinar. There are a couple of other brief comments and questions. Mostly people are asking about specific KPIs, so I suggest, as Adrian mentioned earlier, it's better to visit smartkpis.com. The domain is mentioned on the top right side of the screen that you're seeing. So you'll be able to access lots of different KPIs from the classified or categories of your choices, and I think you'll be able to download some of the evaluation forms as well from the same portal. Am I right, Adrian?
Yes, and in terms of answering to very specific questions for setting targets or for certain KPIs, or for looking into how you can manage performance in certain KPIs, if they are already posted, I can answer them in particular.
Okay. Well, as we are pressed on the time now, so I guess we may call it at the end, and with the note of thank you to Adrian. Thank you very much for your detailed presentation, and we look forward to having you back in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. As mentioned, folks, and as you're seeing on the screen, Adrian will be in Riyadh between 8 to 12 December, and then between 15 to 17 December he'll be in Khobar. For certified KPI professional and practitioner training courses. You can access this landing page by visiting kpi.mile.org. This was broadcasted on the chat box, so you can access it directly. Also, we are recording this webinar, and you'll be able to download the soft copy of the presentation from the Mile community, community.mile.org. As well as you'll be able to access and download all the previous webinars, archive webinars, and of all the previous webinars of the KPI which we have done with the KPI Institute. Again, Adrian, thank you very much. Any concluding remarks that you would like to give?
Thank you very much for the opportunity to share the knowledge of the KPI Institute in terms of how professionals should correctly manage with KPIs. In this term, for this specific webinar, we've discussed about target setting, but of course, managing with KPIs means more than looking into KPI targets, means selecting KPIs, documenting KPIs, establish targets for KPIs, of course, gather data, report data, base decisions on how you are meeting the targets and communicate the performance. All these aspects are part of the performance management framework employed by the KPI Institute, and is something that it is reflected as part of our certification programs delivered all over the world, and also in Saudi Arabia. So thank you once again for the opportunity to deliver this webinar, and I very welcome your attendance for an interest for the webinar.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you all of those who participated and attended this webinar and for your questions. Again, please do visit community.mile.org. We will be uploading this recorded